ഇത് ലോഗിൻ ചെയ്യണല്ലോ. ലോഗിൻ ചെയ്ത
What is this? Develop a free program is a contribution to society. How much, that depends on the details. If the program is very useful, it contributes a lot. If it's hardly useful at all, it contributes very little. But if it's free software, that means it's distributed in such a way that it contributes whatever it has to offer.
ICFOSS, the outcome of a decade of work by free software enthusiasts, advocates, developers, and supporters in the state of Kerala and outside. On the 8th year of operation, the center houses a prototyping and fabrication lab supporting open hardware, governance lab, development team of 50+ employees, a blender center of excellence, state nodal agency, Malayalam computing, state-of-the-art production, development service, language technology lab, UAV workstation, a dedicated team on assistive technology at the AT lab and training areas. The research projects of ICFOSS include collaboration and support of central and state agencies like the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Spices Board, Kerala State Electricity Board, and so on. With e-governance getting a wide recognition and Internet of Things driving the era of intelligent digital mesh at one end, and the rise in localization of contents and demand for use of technology for bridging social strata at the other end, ICFOSS has placed itself at the center, exploring both and connecting those. The software and hardware needs arising out of the billions of devices, things expected to get connected, will have to be addressed by the open source community. Open IoT is aimed at developer communities working in this direction. Open IoT launched a public LoRaWAN network for IoT devices on 25th April 2018. Using this, team deployed a fully functional weather station in Technopark for identifying and analyzing weather patterns. Drones and allied technologies are no more a thing of future. The exponential curve in the uprise of the tech is now backed with a huge open source community. At the UAV workstation, hexcopters, quadcopters, flying wing, and fixed wings are designed, built, and assembled. The GIS data hence produced are processed using open drone map and photogrammetry technique to create 3D models and data sets with a wide range of application. Technologies overriding the social divide, bridging the inequalities and knowledge contributing back to society is explored at the AT Lab. The Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala launched an ergonomic mouse called T-Slide on May 16, 2018, developed by this lab. Currently, there is no affordable locally sourced lip mouse available in Indian market. AT Lab, in association with University of Applied Sciences Technikum Wien, Austria, designed a solution for the same, named Flip Mouse. Free softwares like Blender and Krita controls substantial share in new media art industry. The Blender Center of Excellence is engaged in research projects and training activities, encouraging local content creation and development. The COE also works in cutout animation, projection mapping, and blend for web online contents. Educational content and games with locally relevant data is being created using H5P and other technologies. The Media Lab also contribute to the larger repository. Icfos is also focusing in the field of e-governance and language technology. The Language Technology Lab at Icfos has developed a Malayalam spell checker in association with AUKBC Research Center of Anna University. Lekha OCR, an open OCR with Malayalam Engine, an online POS editor, and an online platform for Unicode ASCII font converter are another important outputs. The lab is also engaged in developing Malayalam chatbot, social media data analysis of Malayalam and deep learning technology. ICFOSS was recognized by the state utility for its research and development to assist KSEB in mapping 14 lakh high-tension poles across Kerala using OpenStreetMap and allied technologies. This project was accomplished by creating a software stack integrating various free software utilities, and GIS mapping tools were used for visualizing the lines to give a holistic view for KSEB. Recognizing the need for capacity building for gender equality, ICFOSS hosts Women Hackathon, a residential training program for selected girl students for technology institutes. Knowledge transfer and training is integrated through the spine of research activities under ICFOSS. Training are conducted for government, industries, and students across Kerala. The center offers dedicated training facility with high-performance machines and skilled resource persons. The collaborative projects on Interdisciplinary Center of the College of Engineering Trivandrum and the project with Department of Technical Education on Malayalam text to speech synthesis are examples of clear connectivity with academia. ICFOSS imparts force-based entrepreneurship by supporting and facilitating entrepreneurs to commercialize in R&D outcomes, an automated parking solution, water meter, and one. Dr. Rahul Dey, Dr. Kannan Maugalya, Dr. G. Nagarjuna, Shashi Pilasheri Beaker, Professor Sebastian Morris, and so on. ICFOSS looks forward to expanding its programs for larger benefit of society, also as a center of excellent research.
Develop a free program is a contribution to society. How much, that depends on the details. If the program is very useful, it contributes a lot. If it's hardly useful at all, it contributes very little. But if it's free software, that means it's distributed in such a way that it contributes whatever it has to offer.
ICFOSS, the outcome of a decade of work by free software enthusiasts, advocates, developers, and supporters in the state of Kerala and outside. On the 8th year of operation, the center houses a prototyping and fabrication lab supporting open hardware, e-governance lab, development team of 50+ employees, a Blender assistive technology at the AT lab and training areas. The research projects of ICFOSS include collaboration and support of central and state agencies like Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Spices Board, Kerala State Electricity Board, and so on. With e-governance getting a wide recognition and Internet of Things driving the era of intelligent digital mesh at one end, and the rise in localization of contents and demand for use of technology for bridging social strata at the other end. ICFOSS has placed itself at the center, exploring both and connecting those. The software and hardware needs arising out of the billions of devices, things expected to get connected, will have to be addressed by the open source community. Open IoT is aimed at developer communities working in this direction. Open IoT launched a public LoRaWAN network for IoT devices on 25th April 2018. Using this, team deployed a fully functional weather station in Technopark for identifying and analyzing weather patterns. Drones and allied technologies are no more a thing of future. The exponential curve in the uprise of the tech is now backed with a huge open source community. At the UAV workstation, hexcopters, quadcopters, flying wing, and fixed wings are designed, built, and assembled. The GIS data hence produced are processed using open drone map and photogrammetry technique to create 3D models and data sets with a wide range of application. Technologies overriding the social divide, bridging the inequalities and knowledge contributing back to society is explored at the AT Lab. The Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala launched an ergonomic mouse called T-Slide on May 16, 2018, developed by this lab. Currently, there is no affordable locally sourced lip mouse available in Indian market. AT Lab, in association with the University of Applied Sciences Technicum Wien, Austria, designed a solution for the same, named Flip Mouse. Free softwares like Blender and Krita controls substantial share in new media art industry. The Blender Center of Excellence is engaged in research projects and training activities, encouraging local content creation and development. The COA also works in cutout animation, projection mapping, and blend for web online contents. Educational content and games with locally relevant data is being created using H5P and other technologies. The Media Lab also contributes to the larger repository. ICFOSS is also focusing in the field of e-governance and language technology. The Language Technology Lab at ICFOSS has developed a Malayalam spell checker in association with AUKBC Research Center of Anna University. Lekha OCR, an open OCR with Malayalam engine, an online POS editor, and an online platform for Unicode ASCII font converter are another important outputs. The lab is also engaged in developing Malayalam chatbot, social media data analysis of Malayalam and deep learning technology. ICFOSS was recognized by the state utility for its research and development to assist KSEB in mapping 14 lakh high-tension ports across Kerala using OpenStreetMap and allied technologies. This project was accomplished by creating a software stack integrating various free software utilities, and GIS mapping tools were used for visualizing the lines to give a holistic view for KSEB. Recognizing the need for capacity building for gender equality, ICFOSS hosts Women Hackathon, a residential training program for selected girl students for technology institutes. Knowledge transfer and training is integrated through the spine of research activities under ICFOSS. Training are conducted for government, industries, and students across Kerala. The center offers dedicated training facility with high-performance machines and skilled resource persons. The collaborative projects on Interdisciplinary Center of the College of Engineering Trivandrum and the project with Department of Technical Education on Malayalam text to speech synthesis are examples of clear connectivity with academia. ICFOSS imparts force-based entrepreneurship by supporting and facilitating entrepreneurs to commercialize its R&D outcomes. An automated parking solution and water meter that runs on ICFOSS LoRaWAN and the drone-based mapping and assistive technology services built on the designs of respective labs are by demonstrates of the same. With support of Kerala's startup mission, ICFOSS is setting up a FOSS incubator to enable the outputs. In association with Kerala Hardware Mission, ICFOSS has proposed an open hardware lab which will facilitate the developments in open hardware and lot. Driven by the leadership of Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala, Shri Pinarayi Vijayan, Chairman of Board of Governance of ICFOSS, and with an advisory board capturing the likes of Dr. Rahul Dey, Dr. Kannan Maugalya, Dr. G. Nagarjuna, Shashi Pilasheri Beetal, Professor Sebastian Morris, and so on. ICFOSS looks forward to expanding its programs for the larger benefit of the society and also as a center of excellence in research.
Webinar of the series of webinar sessions brought to you by ICFOSS. Our last webinar was on Mathematical Foundations on Machine Learning. Today, we welcome you all to the third webinar, which is on the topic AI Regulations, AI Ethics and Regulations. For those who are new to the webinar, let's familiarize ICFOSS a little. Many of us are familiar with ICFOSS and its whole family. The International Center for Free and Open Source Software aims to leverage the idea of FOSS and thereby enhancing the quality of lifestyle of the young generations of Kerala. ICFOSS is always in lead introducing new technologies which are really obliging in parts of the communities of Kerala. Came to the forefront technical training sessions, winter and summer schools on emerging technologies, back-to-work programs for women, residential camps for young ladies who are in the tech field and more. We do not roll out the trainings and ignore the participants behind. Instead, they are all brought together under one umbrella to introduce and enlighten them with the new ideas and innovations that happen in the tech field. Our relationship with the participants is a never-ending one. We do have a sincere intention of guiding you and helping you achieve new heights in their career. Before we start our session, a kind reminder for all the participants: kindly mute your mic during the presentation. It may interfere with the voice of the presenter and this may lead to the interruption of the session. You can always put your doubts in the public chat session. Hence, after the session, the relevant doubts can be asked and it can be discussed and those doubts can be cleared. Also, we have a Telegram group set up for you for your future doubts and helps needed, the Telegram group link will be provided to you in between. So, we are entering into the main agenda of the program. ICFOSS Director Dr. Shabarish Karnakaran, who was meant to be here to have an introductory note with you, unfortunately, who couldn't attend the meeting due to some personal reasons. Dr. Shabarish Karnakaran was the former e-governance head of Kerala State Mission, and he is a leading personality in implementing various e-governance projects and research on several web-based applications. Since we are not having here right now, we will move on to the next session. Today's session is handled by Sri Jagannath Gopinathan. He is an evangelist of artificial intelligence and machine learning in a global level. He is a senior manager of projects based on applied data science at Cognizant in the Artificial Intelligence and Analytics Group. He leads the Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence Consulting Group focused on helping Fortune 500 companies in adopting and AI. He works on varied business problems which involve applying concepts from ML, AI, deep learning, natural language processing, image processing, information extraction and retrieval, data science, and big data. He has successfully delivered industry standard and recognized machine learning and artificial intelligence problems. Prior to this, he lead analyst in Protein team at WNS Global Services. He played global roles in techno leadership, evangelism, research and development, and building high-performance teams in multiple public limited companies and government-sponsored research and development labs in India and in the United States. Sir, we are so honored to have you here for the talk. I welcome Sri Jagannath Gopinathan to have the session on AI ethics and regulations. So welcome to the webinar, and the session is all yours now.
Thank you, team. Thank you, ICFOSS and the ICFOSS team for inviting me for a session in this webinar series. So, as mentioned, I'll spend some time in discussing with you all on artificial intelligence, ethics, and regulation. So, before we move on to the topic, I would like to set some stage here. In the current context of this webinar, we are talking AI with the purview of open source in the front. So in 2020, if we talk about AI as like any other technology, today, the main reason is most of the researchers, most of the enterprise took a brave and bold decision to publish or bring many frameworks to the open source community, or they didn't hold back their research findings into their labs. Rather, they decided to publish it and make it accessible for the larger research development community, and hence combined with the many other hardware and software revolution, AI become a big booming technology for the last 6 years or so. So if you look today, every enterprise, everything which we touch, everywhere there will be something which is empowered by AI. And to the AI function or the AI to be enabled, there needs to be data. And the center of data is you and me. So essentially, the vast majority of the data which is consumed, processed, analyzed, and predicted, forecasted, or acted on top of any AI algorithm will be generated or is generated by people like you and me doing a task or any other activity which we need to perform as part of our daily routine. Let it be sending a message or making a bank transaction or anything. So that boils down into one thing. AI is impacting our life. If AI is impacting our life, that means every moment of us, is being watched by somebody else, a program, something which is not human, but some call it is similar to the human brain and act decision. But whether that system possesses ethics are similar to a human or the creators of the system that possesses ethics as a common society or a common good civil society is an emerging question which appears in the civil society as well as in the enterprise today. So when I look back from my early days of my career to today, the 15 years of journey, back in 2004 or so, nobody talks much about AI because it was just an academic or very few companies trying to do things. And nobody does AI project, deep learning project in their college. Now, there's a vast majority of projects in the computer science or electronics field. College projects are boiled down in AI, and people are now bringing down systems which can now maybe Silicon Valley self-driving cars in developing countries. That's the stage. Between all these years, there are certain things which we forget that when AI revolution comes, we need to be very cautious. Is that something needs to be panic? No. Is that something because we always take advantage of the technology, the positive side on it, and take precaution so that technology is not getting misused in any way and adversely impact the human life. That's the context. Having said that, many of you may be trying to get a career in the data science field or any other relevant area. So, why AI is important is industrialists say if there is a fifth industrial revolution, if we call it, so that will be completely powered by AI-based systems such as manufacturing units, plants, food breaking, everywhere, wherever you put machinery, those machineries will be human monitored, not human operated. I would like to put the word human monitored rather than like completely automated. Avoid any kind of speculation which we build up on top of AI system. So human monitored or human observed system than a human operated systems. So that will be a big industry revolution. And behind all this revolution, there will be a lot of brilliant minds like you will be working, build hardware, software, and algorithms to make this fifth revolution happening. So when we say artificial intelligence, the revolution is to be regulated in the world. And there are two questions asked by the enterprise, society, as well as the researchers in the field. What we need to regulate? Should we regulate AI or AI-based technology and product? And we may think why we ask these questions. Why should we regulate and why we think about like whether AI or technology needs to be regulated? The reason is AI is a rapidly developing area. That means let's take AI from the equation. Let's say it's an innovation. Innovation is happening in this area and it's more of a theoretical as well as a practical world. The innovation can wait for somebody to pass a regulation, and we call regulation or law as a blunt and slow process, because the law should be very precise, interpretable, applicable in the right context, and all these things. So it takes a lot of time. So practically, the first one, you cannot theoretically or practically regulate artificial intelligence, because that's an area of study. It consists many other fields contributing to the nourishment or enhancement of that particular area. At the same time, theoretical advances appearing in this field is being leveraged to build innovative products and solutions. Those solutions need to be regulated for any practical purpose. why it should be regulated is a good question. So, you might have seen a couple of months back there was an incident that happened in the United States where a person was being brutally killed by a police officer during an incident reported, and it was a false one, and the person was unfortunately passed away during the particular incident. And that is not a single incident which is happening in the United States or any part of the country. Discrimination as a human, bias as a human, is quite normal, and it happens, and decisions are getting biased in different ways. Followed by that incident, there are questions asked by the industrialists, questions asked by the civil rights movement. People got like a warning bodies everywhere, and some of the leading enterprises shown an example saying like face recognition systems are used by federal law enforcement agencies across the globe, and companies like IBM are no longer going to supply face recognition technologies to federal law enforcement agency. And then Amazon came, then Microsoft came, everybody just started saying like, hey, we are going to put some cap on whom and for what purpose this face recognition technology is going to be sold. If you look into the student community, we can see that all our students are now the post-pandemic world creating face recognition technology. You understand whether somebody is wearing a mask or right. So the technology is as low as that, but it is being like or that can be implemented as simple as like a college project, but it is being sold as big as an enterprise product. But product is getting a crucial decision facing that we are going to decide who is going to use this technology for what purpose, and we are going to be self-regulate ourselves. That means this certain sort of ethical consideration is coming into there. What it takes to bring regulation in the artificial intelligence field is that we need to first codify any terminology or every terminology which is involved in the legal part. So the first of the challenge which is faced by majority of law creators or the lawyers who involved in drafting this regulation, including people from the United States, Europe, Canada, and all these leading countries, where they wanted to codify or precisely define what is artificial intelligence. So one of the leading document came from United States government, that is the National Defense Systems, try to define with respect to the four principles. So I'm just flashing those four principles on the screen. So which says that any artificial system that performs a task under varying unpredictable circumstances without significant human oversight, or that can learn from experience and improve performance when exposed to data set, which is basically an ambiguous representation of what an AI-enabled software system is trying to do. But still, in a legal terms, there can be ambiguities and interpretation can be made out of that. To support and basically override those ambiguities, they just further try to clarify those things in the next statement, such as inclusion of software, hardware, and perception, cognition, planning, learning, communication, and physical action, which is basically learned through different algorithms. And the characteristics is getting defined through the third statement, like saying like it acts like a human. So the language acts like a human in legal terms, may be saying that it is not precisely a human, but it behaves like a human, including the human's cognitive mechanism may be there. And then further they clarify that as like saying like a cognitive task, which is as equal to human being may be performed by such a system, and say that at a point of time it may be performing a rational task which is embedded into a robot. It can sometimes do planning, reasoning, and communicating, and decision making and acting. This is made as a, like the simple artificial intelligence term, made as an ambiguous but software enterprise, everybody satisfied definition here. As a practitioner, what we understand from this codification of artificial intelligence is, if you are developing a software system or a hardware-enabled AI system, what it is going to perform, whether it is just going to simply recognize somebody as somebody's face, or is it going to recognize the face and take an action on it. When we say taking an action, think about the most advanced technology as self-driving car. A self-driving car is the most complex AI system which we can imagine right now, because it uses both computer vision, deep learning, as well as sensor systems or radar-like systems to basically drive by itself in a road condition, which is exactly mimicking the behavior of a human. People like you and me start a car, put a gear, accelerate, apply gear, apply brake, everything. All this decision, depending upon what you're seeing, straight in the road, condition of the road, other vehicle, everything. It's basically a cognitive process. Driving is a cognitive process, which is essentially codified in the law, saying like you have cognition, then planning is required. When a car is driving by itself, it should plan which side of the road, which line of the road it should go, and it should also learn from the situation, like when 3 cars or 4 cars are coming in a bump situation or bumper to bumper situation, how should I behave? How should I basically plan my speed, and how should I communicate with other vehicles, either a left, right indicator? All these software artifacts need to be basically considered, and it needs to be modified as part of the law. That's the most amazing thing when it comes to the regulation part. But there are like certain other competition when it arrives is to essentially creating a law. Artificial intelligence, when it became a like big revolution or a big industrial part for the last 5 to 6 years, what happened is that there is a competition started to arise in the cross-country borders. Who is going to be the AI superpower in the forthcoming years? It's a big question, or a big competition race happening in the world. So beyond all these definitions, there are like interest from governments and researchers to protect their intellectual property, their research result to be protected and used in a fair manner, and everybody would like to be leader in the space of artificial intelligence. So the regulation part is slowly coming from a legal phase, defining a national policy of artificial intelligence, which says that where and how a central government or a federal government or a state system or a local governance system should be employing, utilizing, certifying artificial intelligence-based system for all the practical purposes, meaning both federal use of artificial intelligence and use of artificial intelligence in day-to-day civilian life. Everything needs to be understood, certified, regulated by a greater AI policy. So there are countries like United States, Canada, China, European Union, UK, and European Union are leading examples of bringing such kind of documents showcasing how and when certain things and how to basically maintain the leadership intellectual property of their country's researchers is an interesting thing happening in the AI and regulations world. So basically the executive order of the President of the United States emphasized primarily in 8 facts, saying that the first is public should have a trust in artificial intelligence. The reason is that there is a big hype or there's a greater discussion happening in the civil society saying that AI could take jobs of millions. We have been there in such situation. There are such arguments happened in the past. Computer came first. We were told by people that computer could take away our jobs, but nothing happened. We are still using computers and we are generating more jobs. The same hype or the same sort of like speculation is being generated in the case of AI. And initially, then the second type of speculation which was built again was saying like the AI system can do wrong. If AI does operation, it is not going to be AI perform surgery. It's not going to be something similar to what learned surgeon performing some operation. If a car is driving, it is not going to have same cognitive capabilities as like a human being, and he won't be the car won't be basically doing a good thing. And there are examples of Uber or Lyft crash their pilot vehicle in different parts of California, quoted as an example, and speculation started building. But what government says when with the AI policy saying that we need to create trust in our public, don't give the wrong speculation aspect of our citizens. They should be aware about what good it is going to do by AI systems and how it is going to impact their life. In the event of an adverse action, either done by a group of civil people or by an enterprise or by a government organization, how and when the government is going to protect the interest of every citizen with respect to the action performed by an AI system, that needs to be ensured. So every AI policy across the globe is now trying to bring, or they should be basically bringing and building the public trust. And second is the public participation in understanding or taking knowledge about how these systems are working, how it is going to impact. It may be like quite an intangible part how the system is working, but it can be like made as simple as somebody to like say play around with in a roadshow or something so that they can build their confidence in that. The third part is that the greater scientific integrity is required. Researchers, the developers working in such kind of AI development, they should be well educated about the inclusive part of development, the ethics part of the development. How should they develop data? How to curate the data? What to look for? What not to be excluded from the data? What not to be excluded when they are testing? What should be included? All these things should be basically part of the scientific community involved behind building those algorithms and the software artifact. And the risk assessment and management is essentially the one of the key aspects of any product development or any service development aspect. So assume the situation like we are trying to bring a self-driving car which will drive us through all the way from East Fort to Technopark every day morning 9 a.m. What are the odds of like we making so many mistakes in that? Or we just bump with the auto rickshaw or we bump with the bike person or we do some nasty things in the road, right? Whether our self-driving system is going to make those kind of mistakes. It isn't going to understand every pedestrian as a pedestrian, or is it going to understand a pedestrian as an electric post? What are the odds? Is there any chance somebody could fool our AI system. That's the most key part in risk assessment and management. Because as we are smart, people are becoming smarter than us. Whether it is human or a software system, people are becoming smarter, and they found ways to fool even artificial intelligence system. So the product development, the service development, platform development should be essentially considering the risk assessment of what and how things are going to work, and what and how, when it can fail, and how to mitigate it, and who will take the responsibility of it, and which evolves basically into the point number 9, which is ensuring the safety and security. And there are things like the benefits and cost, how we could like make it affordable or unaffordable, and all these aspects, and the flexibility to basically upgrade and change things as and when there are like certain things are going wrong. And the debatable topic, or the topic which is going to be very well going to be debated and fighted over a period of time, will be the disclosure and transparency, which is coming in the AI space. People believe that certain AI technologies are their sole intellectual property, and there are counter questions that these technologies or this knowledge should be shared to the society. So it's not only in every field that question is there, but the technology and underlying principle, disclosure and transparency is one item which people are going to pay, but that's one of the key considerations for governments there, and coordinating the integrity of all these systems so that we have a fair, safe, ethics fulfilled AI systems and practices running in picture. That's a key aspect of all this regulation which is coming in picture. The broader movement in this aspect even happened from the FDA. So I think now, due to the pandemic, most of us may know the name FDA, that is Federal Drug Administration, which is the authority in the United States to approve medicines and medical devices for a practical purpose. So FDA realized that softwares are already there, which is trying to assist diagnosing of diseases, but artificial intelligence is going to be deployed in every hardware and software systems such as X-rays, MRI scan, or the microscopes, whichever aspect the softwares are going to be smart and AI enabled. What FDA said is that it can't just happen overnight. Somebody implant an AI system and doing things there and claiming that somebody got some disease because the AI system said so. So that is not going to happen. We need to have like very thorough regulations happening there. How and when somebody can say that my microscope or my X-ray machine or my MRI scan machine is AI, and then you just push the patient inside that, and it will say what medical condition the patient is possessing, and decision can be directly routed to the doctor or the care provider. It should be thoroughly tested, vetted, and all these things. And why this is a big deal in the AML society is that by the time you might have came about learned about something called reinforcement learning, which is one of the biggest research development and product development area in the current area. So there are attempts to bring reinforcement learning based software systems or AML systems in the medical domain, and which has a fundamental problem there, considering the traditional AML system. For example, if you develop a model which can predict an image as cat or dog, given the same cat image, every time your model will predict that this is a cat. Given the same cat dog image, every time the model will predict it as a dog. that is not. Today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, as long as the model is same, the image is same, those models same, it's done. But reinforcement learning systems are not trained to do so. It learns from the new experience and settings provided there, and over a period of time, it can understand certain things in a different way, and it can slowly start getting better. So given the same input, same output is not always guaranteed. The reinforcement learning system provided the characteristics of theory and system. In that case, how that should be deployed in a medical condition, and who should be responsible for the actions taken by such a system, and how should basically the medical community use this should be regulated. So in the previous part, which we were trying to see, is how government should be basically regulating or certifying things about how AML development is going to happen. And here, what we are trying to see is in a domain-specific area, specifically healthcare, which is very critical for the human life, we are trying to see how these systems are developed, deployed, and whether it is doing good or bad, whether it should be appear in the market at all, this kind of domain-specific regulation. So such regulations are going to be extended to other domains such as banking and financial services and all the areas where we are basically trying to look stuff in. So these regulations and interpretability of this data result is broadly basically the FDS classification is saying about the data management, retraining and republishing of the models, how we are talking about the model's performance and how the models are getting updated, and all these aspects are basically considered in the FDS regulation as well as other parties is involving in the regulation. So if you carefully examine these aspects of regulations and interpretation, people are very much cognitive about how you're collecting the data, how you're assuring the quality of the data, and is there anybody auditing how the data is being collected, whether the data is being collected completely ethically and balanced way. That's one of the crucial aspects. I could give a very interesting example at the end of this slide, end of this talk, where somebody unintentionally forgot to do some quality check in the data collection, and which eventually spoiled the reputation of a leading institution in the world. There are cases like all our machine learning models that won't live for 10 years, not even sometimes it won't live for 3 months. I could see practically in my in enterprises, I see model leaving us shorter as 60 days or as shorter 30 days and getting retrained kind of thing. But when we retrain and put it in a human touching interface, what could happen? And how will we decide that which model and what condition and under what data this retraining is going to happen? And how you assess is very critical. So that's a broader picture about how regulation and regulation related aspects are appearing in the artificial intelligence area. Now I'm just going to take a quick pause here and just creating a scenario here. I'm flashing a data set here in the screen. So assume you as a data scientist or a data analyst, you are provided such a data where you have name of a person, his father's name, mother's name. Assume this Aadhaar number is an original Aadhaar number. I just put 1235 here and the date of birth and rest of the details here. What would you do here? Somebody says that you can, could you please build a machine learning model which says that this student is going to enroll for higher studies or not? Assume I'm going to provide you 10-year worth of student data with the Aadhaar card, date of birth, and all. What would we practically do? Generally, what data scientists do is that they just say, pandas data frame to draw Aadhaar number and date of birth, and this take the rest of the things and just proceed with the model development process. I would say, don't even touch the data with a 10 feet long. That is dangerous. Because as a data analyst or a data scientist, you should not be worried about seeing somebody's personally identifiable information in your data set where you are trying to build a machine learning model. And you should not never consider by any means, including, and obviously other number is not going to possess any meaning or it's not going to add any value in any of the machine learning model. Obviously, we could use data in different ways, but we should not be basically getting this information in a raw form. And if somebody gives that you could just basically pull back saying that, sir, I think there's a mistake. I'm seeing possibly identifying information there. That is where the ethics comes into play. We are trained, every data science training is basically focusing on how to pre-process the data, how to feature engineer the data, how to build a model, how to evaluate the model, how to operationalize a model, and then monitor the performance of a model. And all these aspects are basically being taught there. But what should we do in the event of a very sensitive data thrown in front of you is a big question. Data is regulated in the modern world. Not all part of the world data is regulated, but there are certain countries and regions. If you work with larger enterprise, depending upon the region, depending upon the data, you may be asked to go through certain trainings, comply with the data protection, privacy rights of the citizens whose data you are trying to analyze, and you will never see any kind of a personally identifiable information flowing in your data. If so, you should be basically saying like, sir, I believe I should not be seeing this data set, and you should basically provide a mask data, and I don't need this data as a data science. You should have that kind of awareness there as the data scientist who is working in the ground. So that is where the ethics is going to play a greater role. What if we don't take those kind of things into consideration? What if we have columns like religion and caste available here? Religion, caste and subcaste available here, gender available here. Sometimes we could feel that as a social scientist, we could say like, well, I believe religion can be a leading factor to understand somebody is enrolling for higher studies. Gender can be another factor which can basically determine somebody is going to enroll for higher studies. But, should we use those factors or those kind of features in your data science model or in your machine learning model? That is going to be a tricky part there. So to answer that question, you should first consider what is the country's pertaining rule about citizens' data protection, citizens' privacy. If privacy and if any point of time your model is going to violate that privacy, from the model output somebody is able to walk backwards and identify the person, size person in any point of time, then you should basically refrain from attaching those as your features, and you should find a way to redact or smartly do a feature engineering so that nobody basically walk back from the prediction to the individual person eventually. That is where the ethics and the education about ethics in data science going to play a crucial role. Why it is? Because we are basically biased as human beings. Many things. We have speculations about everything and anything in this world. And some of the greater examples of AI started performing very biased. Most notorious examples are these three news articles, which some of you might have already seen. Amazon had an AI recruitment basically started discriminating against women, which is not fair, I would say, in the gender equality aware society or a free country. It is not fair. Either an algorithm or human to discriminate by somebody's gender or race or anything. So the same human behavior was came into an algorithm. Should it be prevented, or can it be prevented, or can we prevent that? Yes, should. And the answer for how to prevent is where it is playing by applying the ethics. And applying the ethics is a bigger exercise which every enterprise, every research organization, which will be essentially doing that. The same way, there was like there's a software which is still being used by many countries, many states in the United States for determining once somebody committed a crime, what is the chance for them to commit a crime again, so that they can put under monitoring. So those softwares are basically saying like it is biased towards certain race, certain color, and all these things. And the third one about the Google for labeling colored people as gorillas is not really Google. Even many of the face recognition software or many of the deep learning models shows the same weakness. If you have doubt, you could try. I personally tried that many times, and there was like some experiments we conducted in the past to understand the behavior of it coming. So all these three mistakes happen in pre-enterprise grade software or end user ready software. Was a mistake happened in how the enterprise collected the data, or how the enterprise decided source the data for building the model. If they put an effort, understand the sources of the data, the balances, checks and balances in the data perfectly, it could have been prevented up to an extent. Data alone doesn't solve the problem. Once you build the model, most model building, somebody might have done a plotting of an F1 score or precision recall or a confusion matrix. Well, that is theoretically proving that your model is doing good in your validation set or test set. Congratulations on that. Everything may look good. But in practical scenario, how it behaves, somebody performed an A/B testing, somebody thought about all the negative cases. That is where the regulation and the fair software practice is going to marry there and build a completely ethical AI software testing practice in the enterprise to solve that. So when we say we got trained in data science, what we are getting trained is how to build a model, validate it statistically, or the norms set up by the algorithms for the enterprises for validating your model. But are you testing that for practical deployments in the field, practical deployment for the end users to do? Are you thinking as like a software engineer or a software tester to test your models in the negative scenarios? It's very critical. Otherwise, we will be producing biased software. There are like many examples. Recent ones are like Apple Card, where the Goldman Sachs is on fire with respect to many of these issues. And there are data leak, and we know about the cases of last year's United States election where companies started to steal information and award of people's opinion in popular platforms and all these things. So these are like some of the key issues which could happen all the time because people are not considering the ethical part of it. So what are the key issues or key areas where enterprise researchers, students, practitioners should be basically looking into AI and this area is one is privacy protection. So citizens' privacy should be always respected. we could debate that privacy is a myth under certain circumstances, saying like, hey, you just enroll in your iPhone or Android phone, you give your fingerprint, you give your face as your identity, and all you give approval for all the end user license agreement, and you give unlimited access to your data. Maybe that is correct. You expect certain things in return, but that doesn't entail everybody to be snoping on you and understanding what you're trying to do and all those things. It should be seen in a much ethical way, and the privacy should be protected in an enterprise way. So it was not so very fair for quite some time, but for the last 2-3 years, there was like strong regulations were passed by many countries, and part of the countries, and which is slowly started giving a better life for everybody, including you and me. And certain things such as accountability is coming into picture. So the question of accountability, big topic a couple of years back when Uber was trying to run a trial run of their self-driving car in California highway. And what happened is that it crashed with the biker, or somebody was riding in a bicycle. And it was quite a big disaster considering the fact that the car was in full autonomy mode, which we could call it as level 4 or level 5 autonomy. And that accident, if such an accident happens, who is responsible? Because car is a non-living entity, and the car cannot be brought into the court for prosecution and cross-questioning about whether car did something bad or ugly and for causing the trouble with that unfortunate human being. So who is responsible for that? Manufacturer of the car, person who purchased the car, the person who written the software, who was offered an upgrade for a bug which you found. That accountability should be basically considered in this part. So if an AI software or AI system makes a mistake, it should be held accountable for all its action is very critical there. The fairness and non-discrimination and justice to all the society, or all the people in the society, is very critical. And lack of fairness and non-discrimination is essentially causes problem which we see in the previous slide, such as colored people is being detected as gorillas by some software system, or people belong to certain race and certain physical attribute is considered as they are going to be people who can commit crimes again and again. Such kind of aspect. The level of transparency and openness is always demanded in the ethics world, but there are like fine lines of providing this transparency in the algorithm output versus the research side, which is still going to be a debating or a debate area for the practitioners as well as enterprises. And it could see like some debate going to happen in the next few years in this subject. Safety and cybersecurity is going to be one. Safety, especially the cybersecurity, could be the right around there is going to be one of the other major trouble here, because the models are going to be getting attacked or theft, or somebody could attempt a theft there. So I could remember like very funny incident, like more than 12 years ago, I was working with some of the folks from leading people who work on machine translation in India, and they were running a server which was offering English to Hindi translation services quite for free, and at a time you can translate 20 sentences was the web service which this was running. And it was running as an experiment so that many people can test, and they were logging all the data and all aspect there. One fine morning, this set of researchers decided to shut down the service, and as a courtesy, they put it in a website saying that on so day, we are going to basically shut down the service. So only one person contacted in the email provided basically concern saying, listen, on shut down it. I have more than 1,000 pages remaining to be translated, and what I am trying to translate is the adult literature which I am going to publish certain books there. So people can like essentially do nasty things behind your AI systems, which the story which I'm talking is which happened around 15 years ago in India. So when we say people could be like basically doing such kind of moderate harmful things behind your AI system sometime, and a greater human oversight, specifically the oversight by the law. And the key thing is that explainability. Probably most of us who are getting trained in AI may be getting trained in softwares which is using explainable artificial intelligence. I think if possible I would try to cover a practical session somewhere later about how we could do practical explainability in machine learning models, because now we never consider any kind of machine learning algorithm as a black box. When I was learning, we say, or when I started practicing machine learning, we say like, okay, these models are black box. It learned and it predicts. Don't ask question why it predicted. If it predicts, you believe the prediction. That was the answer we used to give the CCO, saying like, hey, prediction is made, you believe the prediction. Okay, this is algorithm, this is pure science. But now it is not a scenario. Black box is no more a black box. We can explain why our algorithm predicted certain things as scam talk or spam or ham messages. Anything can be explained from an algorithmic perspective. And there are like diversity inclusion questions, and the one key aspect is the product certification part. The example of FDA is one, and it's going to be like a greater demand of like certifying a product as like when you buy a fridge, you say like it's 3-star energy consuming, 5-star energy consuming. That way, certification may be going to be necessary, and there are like certain hidden costs in developing the AI, such as curating, developing data, and all those. And one key part is the whistleblower protection is very key aspect when it comes to ethics as well as regulation part. It's an area where ethics and regulation are going to overlap, because when industrial AI is going to be a big reality and in practice, there can be things which go under the table and people could bring things into light, and which we typically refer to legal terms as a whistleblower. And protection of whistleblowers' right is not defined with respect to any of the AI regulations so far. So bringing those aspects are going to be some of the key issues which is going to be trouble. So the lack of ethics, another example is like how an ethical system should work is this happened just walkable distance from my current residence. Is like a patient was told by a software assisted system, and a doctor saying like, hey, you're going to die in a couple of hours in phase, which is a shocking news for the patient. We should not have been done in that way in a completely ethical situation. So even though he has a human involved, still it was not a fair to say in the face of a patient to say that okay, your time is up situation. Okay, so that is one of the drawbacks which the lack of ethics could bring into systems. And the world is trying to bring a lot of protection, privacy laws there. GDPR and CDPR are some of the examples. GDPR is basically an European Union initiative called as General Data Protection Rights, and the CDPR is an example which came from United States, that it is applicable only in one state in the United States, which is called California. It is called California Data Protection Rights. So what this entails is that we know that when you buy something in Amazon or whatever website, or when we go browse any website, it collects information about you. So if any such GDPR like rules are there, you can call to the Flipkart office and say, hey, my user ID is this, and I'm using Flipkart for 5 years. Could you please erase all the data belonging to me or my browsing history in Flipkart and confirm it by email? And Flipkart will be basically responsible to address the question and confirming you in written, saying like all your history has been erased from their data warehousing systems. That means your privacy is ensured. Now the second side of it, you are using Flipkart for 5 years or any e-commerce site for 5 years. For a matter of fact, your data, your browsing data, your purchase data might have been already entered into a machine learning model. You could request them saying that if any machine learning model or any AI system is consuming my data, my browsing data, which I produced, you should basically consider redoing it. So that is a costly business, right? You cannot simply go and find where Trigon's data is there in a Flipkart system or Amazon system or Walmart system in an easy way. So that needs an overhaul in how enterprise is doing data science. That is where it becomes tricky. So how you're accessing, creating, curating data in every step of machine learning and preserving the lineage of that data is very critical, and it becomes very critical for organization to basically fix issues or requests coming in such kind of regulatory scenario, like remove my data from your model kind of situation. So this kind of laws, which is emerging in every part of the world, is going to protect the consumer's right or right of people like you and me, as well as giving hard time of people like you and me who are data scientists, who are going to be data scientists or practitioners, product owners, and service providers also. So, which gives a pressure situation to adhere to the ethical, privacy-preserving standards adopted in the work culture as well as. Most of you might have sometimes heard about a data set called Tiny Images, which is one of the most popular image processing data set till a couple of months back, I think before 3 months. This data set was curated by a bunch of MIT scientists, and it was being studied, used, and hundreds and hundreds of papers were written, and thousands of blog posts were written in deep learning using this data set. But two researchers from one from a research lab in Ireland and one from a small startup, they found that it consists very disturbing data inside that. So most of the things are obviously like redacted in the images, and you can go and read this research paper. What it says is that when and how it happened is that when they created the data, nobody basically validated how the data is getting curated. Okay? What is the process of basically this data getting created? This data set was basically crawled from the internet by leveraging a system called WordNet, where the words relations such as harmonic, hyperlink, or all vertical and horizontal relations are represented, is being gathered from that concept. It crawled in the internet and got the data, but they didn't check certain things, whether they are entering into danger zone or not, and fine data filtering. An ethics committee who reviews the data collection, preserving process, and publishing would have been existed. If that would have existed there in MIT at the time, this disaster might have been avoided, because this was like big shame for them. They had publicly apologized and withdraw the data set immediately with immediate effect. Now the data set is no more available from MIT, and they requested everybody to delete it from the server due to the adversarial fine. Having said that, it sounds great that we are getting regulation, we are getting a ethical data science community whom we are training, the enterprises are deploying, enterprises are employing ethical data scientists, and we are having ethical research, transparency, everything is coming into picture with ethics and regulations. But still, we are going to face larger troubles with respect to the adversarial use of this technology. The greater troubles which we are going to face is that how should we protect intellectual property right is going to be created to the machine learning research or AI research. It's one question, because basically stealing the model, somebody stealing the model is going to be one of the latest crimes in AI, which we are going to see eventually. That can happen in many ways, and which can classify as a crime is again a debatable area, because if a human resource poaching happens, the intellectual property naturally goes with the human resource actually. So that is another practical challenge in the law also. There are issues such as reverse engineering of models, which is published to perform certain tasks, and understanding what kind of models are being used, what kind of neural net architecture, what goes behind that, what features are being used, and understanding and reverse engineering those models and fooling the system by interpreter images kind of situation there. A bunch of researchers from Stanford was showcasing, I think, some of examples that if we can put 3 stickers in a stop sign, a self-driving car can understand it as a 30 mile speed or something like that. So a couple of stickers, somebody like from a boomerang bubble gum or something like that could even basically completely fool a system by understanding how it works. And people could perform really adversarial attack, and the last dangerous thing which we are going to see is that interpretability exploitation. So when you make a prediction saying like something is a cat, dog, or somebody smiling or somebody's happy, and all this, based on all these features, the data sent into servers, because from the source into the machine learning model, the man in the middle attack by injecting pixels or injecting other raw data or noises to basically manipulate the model performance is going to be the challenges which cyber law should be basically able to accommodate and adapt to things. And we all know about certain things like deep fake, which deliberate picture, which can basically say like instead of me, I could just play software and it would talk like me there. And after some time, if that is a practical one, deep fake is a practical one. And deep fake can basically make anybody unbelievable in the world of internet. You can't say that whether somebody called Jagan exists with the same credentials as I mentioned at the beginning, or it's something like somebody just sitting there at the end of a wire or not. So those kind of cyber troubles are going to be like other burning challenges for the ethics part. When we started the conversation, we were basically talking about skepticism part of it, right? Skepticism is not, the technology skepticism is not something new to us. It started from the time of Socrates, and he believed that the library will be, it will ruin the mind of human being. That was a speculation which is coming into picture. So it's not something new, and there are many civil rights movement which is basically demanding either to control, regulate, or abolish AI-based systems, which is emerging part of the many part of the world, and that is sometimes like it can be like seen as a positive as well as negative thing. Certain things, certain people, certain groups who request for regulating is going to add value to human life and it makes a better society, but certain things may not be as a brighter future some of the times. So that is one aspect of it. So that is pretty much all about a long lecture about how ethics, AI regulation works in the current situation. And more or less, this is an emerging field in the overall artificial intelligence and AI machine learning area. So there are like all these regulation, ethical committees, ethical officer, demand for somebody being appointed as an ethical officer, and all these aspects are eventually evolving in the enterprise as well as the research community. So having said that, I will be having some time to answer a couple of questions, if anything there.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful session. Now, as sir said, it's the time for your queries and clearing your doubts on this topic. So, if any of the participants have any doubts, please put it in the chat session so that it can be cleared. So, sir, one of the questions from our side is that how the common people should be made aware of these regulations and ethics of AI. So, as you have said in the Flipkart example, when we search something in Flipkart and we use other social media sites like Instagram or Facebook or some other social media sites, the searched item would be visible in as suggestions in those apps also. So this may happen to all the people in this world. So how the common people can be made aware of the AI ethics and regulations based on this topic?
Yeah, that's a good question. It should be basically, in my opinion, in the opinion of the community, the larger AI community is general public should be made aware about their rights, because at the beginning I said, you are generating the data, so you have certain ownership, even though the data is being collected, disturbed and processed by an enterprise. So as a data generator, you should know what is your rights about your data, how it is being processed, who is being processed, so the awareness should be there. So if you go to the GDPR regulation, so the cookies which collects your browsing data when you type something in Flipkart, it comes across all the parts, right? If I ask a question to Flipkart, sitting in the European Union, if I'm consuming Flipkart from European Union, if I ask a question to Flipkart, whom you are selling the data, Flipkart should say the entire history to me, saying like the data is collected by so and so method, and the data goes to company A, B, C, D, E, and from A, B, C, D, the data flows to other companies. So if you understand how computational advertisement works, you can basically imagine that your data collected by most of the e-commerce site may be leveraged by other subsidiary companies or participant companies to basically share those information, show relevant advertisement, reputation, and all those lineage we shown to you. And if that is something worrying for you, you should have the right to say that, never do that. So the CDPR, the California Data Protection, goes one step ahead, and it says like, if you're an e-commerce and if your visitor is coming from the Californian geography, you should give an option to say that use personal information, personally identifiable information collected from the user for algorithmic, the selling or subselling and generating advertisement revenue or not. If I say don't use, it should not be using it. At any point of time, if I identify, as like the situation which you were mentioning, your search history was being like captured from Flipkart, and now your Facebook shows a relevant message, I can post in Flipkart saying like, hey, you violated the terms and conditions between you and me. So now let's discuss kind of situation come from there. Yes, general public should be made aware about their rights. that is very, very important in the AI era. So that is the reason we are like saying like the rules and regulations should be there. So there's a question from Joshua saying like, yeah, AI will not cause employability issue. And then I said about like AI can perform surgery. Yes. Okay, so all these systems, I would call it as assistive technologies, even though the meaning of assistive technology is slightly different. Or that we can rephrase it as technology assisting you. To explain that, I can just explain a little bit about how the regulation about self-driving car works in the United States. So if you buy a car, which is level 4 autonomy, meaning like it can drive by its own, it says like there is a driving wheel, all the physical controls of a car exist there. Okay? You are not getting something without a driving wheel, brake, clutch, gear and anything. Everything is there. There should be a person in the driving seat and who is accountable, auditable, responsible for anything happens by the car. Okay. So now this is the situation about a personal car which I may be using or somebody else may be using. Now when it turns into a taxi, can you imagine there is no driver sitting there? No, it's not going to be like that. There will be a person sitting in the driver's seat and the name driver or chauffeur would be renamed into a safety assistant. Which means in a given point of time, when the software fails to make a cognitive decision, the controller will be given back to the safety assistant and he will be operating it. So basically you are a silent observer and in the event of fail-safe, taking care of that. So your job is not basically gone, rather you are getting upgraded and getting a more relaxed job than the one. The second thing is that the case of surgeons, the complex surgeries which needs, which is a stressful one if you understand how surgeon work, they need to process, they need to be focused, they need to be free from many things. If you ever traveled in the aircraft, some of the aircraft near to the cockpit, there will be a line written there, leave all your worries here and enter to the cockpit. Meaning like that's a focused job. Your worries or your personal problems have no room in the cockpit so that you can perform the job training. So the robots don't have any personal things to worry, so it can assist. And the doctor will get a greater focus on what is going on, what it is doing, and he gets a control to interrupt and take control of things in his own hands if he feels that the machine is not doing good. So it is going to assist, make their lives better. That way, it's going to be assisting. It's not going to be job takeaway. Nowhere it is going to happen in that way. The jobs are getting upgraded and you are getting a much better job there. That is what it is going to happen. Nowhere we don't see it will be kind of a zombie apocalypse or an AI apocalypse. No, that won't be the situation because that is the reason everybody is talking about regulations and ethics. I hope that answers it.
Okay, so when we talk about the developing countries like India, how should we prepare for an AI revolution in the near future?
Well, that's a good question. So there are like many things should play when it comes to adopting AI in general in the national policy perspective. One part of it is like in what areas, in what segments AI is going to be getting adopted. If you think about self-driving cars, the most demanding AI solution in the world, we have practical challenges in India to bring self-driving cars. Challenge is that we don't follow any rule in driving, even though the rule exists. Right? Driving is like a perfectly grammar fallout or grammar obeying language. So we should be putting all the the grammatical construct in place, in perfect, having a healthy driving culture. Unless we don't have that, it will become challenging part for AI development to happen. So it starts from different phases. Like one is like, do we have the right data? Do we have the right environment? Do we have the right investment environment? Do we have the right policies in future? Do we have the laws and regulation to collect and preserve privacy of the human? Everything is needed. So those regulations can appear in national level or state level. It can vary. So anybody can take that initiative and bring those things in the picture. Having said that, I'm not saying that self-driving is impossible in India. It could be. That is a different challenge which needs to be solved in a very smart way. Meaning the research is going to be challenging that data. And there are like our great car companies are working on bringing cars which will address this solution in practical way. So, but one thing is that I could practically see sitting in the other side of the globe is India consists the larger AI talent. So majority of the data science community is coming from India. There is a large number of data science practitioners, trained data scientists are coming from India, and we have good institutions. We have like researchers. If you look into the cutting edge research happening, you see like people coming from India is contributing in a larger way to the AI community. So we have the right ecosystem. Putting something in a framework and coordinated efforts will basically lead our country reach as a AI superpower. Obviously, like United States and China, we should have a competition landscape in mind about how we are going to do these things, how we are going to address where it is going to be used, and how we are going to protect our competitive status as a country stands there. Those kind of national policy also matters, right?
I hope that the data science talents from India could help more in making India a better place for AI in the near future. So, yeah, but then when we talk about today's session, we should talk more and more on AI ethics and regulations in today's scenario, where almost all the fields are being dominated by AI. And we do not know what AI would bring to us in the near future. So let's hope for a better future where AI take over the technologies and make human life fair and easy, as you said in the session, and not more complex. So for that, talks like this should be done more, right, sir?
Yeah, there should be like more awareness, and I think the organization like ICFOSS can do take greater initiatives in such kind of scenario, bringing in picture, and especially the open source community has certain stand about AI and how the AI should be used. Even much before TensorFlow became an open source initiative, it is the open source community who said that we will bring an alternative deep learning framework. But eventually these things became open source, and now we could see like that is fueling our research, right? So in the same way, the open source community, the organization like ICFOSS can take lead on this policy framing and bringing those discussions into the relevant federal bodies to make that happen. It takes time because it took to make this discussion very aggressive. It required the death of George Floyd to become this the discussion much aggressive. That didn't happen in the purview of AI, but that given fire to the ethics and the regulation question in a larger perspective, which was very slow. So without happening such unfortunate situation, I think we should be able to lead solve those discussions.
That was a really nice session from Shri Jagannath Gopinathan, sir. So we are going to the last session of the program. I will deliver the thanking note. He is the head of e-governance and language technology team of ICFOSS. Sir, this is a great pleasure to invite you to the session. I invite you to deliver the thanking note.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you, Jagan, for a wonderful session. Good afternoon, dear participants. Then today, Mr. Jagannath delivered a wonderful session about AI and ethics, because nowadays most of the patients is worried about their data privacy, and then most of the people are already engaged with the social media kind of the things. That's why the most of the companies or AI companies or machine learning aspects nowadays using a lot of personal data as well. So the ethical part, that how to use it properly and ethically, these kind of things, and what are the things behind this work, then Mr. Jagannath has explained it very well. Then I am going to my official duty. First of all, I think it a great honor and privilege to do the purpose of vote of thanks on this occasion on behalf of Icfos. The first and foremost, I thank our chief guest and resource person, my colleague as well as mentor, Mr. Jagannath, for having such a wonderful session. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence.
Thank you, Rajiv and team.
Then we are grateful to our director, Dr. Shanish sir, for his able guidance, has always encouraged us. I thank him for his kindness and his interest and continued support. And also I thank our Secretary and Registrar, Sri Kumar sir, for all his enthusiastic support and make this webinar as a great success. I thank all my team who have been working hard to ensure that this occasion becomes a memorable success, and a special thanks to my fellow colleagues and all those in organizing committee and IT support team, administrative staff, and researchers of our ICFOSS family for their unlimited support and coordination for this event. Our thanks to our participants from various parts of the country present here for their active participation with these long breaks and kind message. We move to end of today's webinar and expect your presence in our future webinar sessions as well. Last but not least, I thank you, my friends, for your cooperation in making this session is a resounding success. Thank you all. Thank you, Jagan. Well, yeah, we'll meet then some other sessions, definitely. There's your presence is required for open source community in AI and ML. We already started our open source community here for the AI and ML. I shared the Telegram link to this one. Again, you please join with this Telegram group and give the suggestions to our upcoming NLP and AI researchers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants, stay tuned for more webinar on this webinar series. Be active in our Telegram group, and contributions are welcome from your side. Thank you all. See you soon.